On the 15th of October, 1944, 3 American P-51 Mustangs took off from Bodney Airfield in England for a routine patrol over occupied Belgium. The weather was perfect. The pilots were experienced. The planes were serviced and fueled. They never came back. No distress signals were received. No enemy engagement was reported. No wreckage was found. Lieutenants Daniel Garrett, Francis Holbrook, and Robert Whelan simply vanished from the sky at 1447, their radio transmissions cutting off mid-sentence. The Army searched for 2 weeks before declaring them missing, presumed dead. Their families buried empty coffins. But in 2009, excavation for a Belgian wind farm uncovered something 12 feet beneath a field that had been untouched since the war. 3 P-51 Mustangs arranged in a perfect defensive triangle, their fuselages intact, their pilots still strapped in their seats. The planes hadn't crashed. They'd been buried. When investigators opened Danny Garrett's cockpit, they found his remains clutching a torn journal page against his chest, 4 words written in his shaking hand. They made us disappear. What the recovery team discovered next would reveal why the Allied command had erased all records of that patrol, why 3 pilots' families had been lied to for 65 years, and why someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury 3 planes and their pilots in a Belgian field rather than let anyone discover what they'd seen on the 15th of October, 1944, and the 5th of October, 2019, Indianapolis. Emma Garrett stood in her childhood home, staring at a trunk she'd never seen before. Her father's funeral had been that morning, sudden heart attack, no warning, gone at 75. Now she was sorting through his things, finding the predictable remnants of a quiet life. Tax returns, photo albums, his reading glasses still bookmarked in a Tom Clancy novel he'd never finish. The trunk was in the attic, shoved behind Christmas decorations and boxes labeled Emma's school things. Military green padlocked, her grandfather's name stenkled on the side. Lieutenant Daniel Garrett, USAF. She'd never known it existed. The padlock was rusted but cheap. 3 hits with a hammer and it cracked open. Inside, the smell hit her first. Old leather and gun oil. Something metallic and preserved. Her grandfather's dress uniform folded with military precision. His wings, his Purple Heart, which confused her. He'd never come home wounded. He'd never come home at all. Under the medals, a leather journal, its pages yellowed but intact. The first entry was dated the 1st of October, 1944. Her grandfather's handwriting, careful and slanted. 2 weeks until we ship out to Bodney. Frankie says the Germans are finished, that we'll be home by Christmas. Bobby believes him. They're good boys, both of them. Best wingmen a pilot could ask for. If something happens to me, at least Margaret will know I flew with brothers. Emma sat on the attic floor reading by the light of her phone. She'd grown up, knowing only the basics. Her grandfather had died in the war. His plane was never found. Her grandmother Margaret had remarried in 1947 to the man Emma had called Grandpa Bill. But this journal made Danny Garrett real. 24 years old, missing his pregnant wife, worried about his friends. She flipped ahead, scanning entries about missions, close calls, descriptions of England that sounded like another planet. Then, she found the 14th of October, 1944. The handwriting was different here, pressed hard into the page. Something's wrong with tomorrow's patrol. Wrote. Changed last minute. No explanation. We're being sent over Sector 7, which has been restricted for 2 months. Colonel Morrison called me paranoid, but Frankie noticed it too. The coordinates don't match any known German positions. We're not hunting anything out there. Bobby's nervous. Kid's got instincts like a cat, and he's been pacing all evening. Says his teeth hurt, which is what he always says when something bad's coming. Told him it's routine patrol. Nothing special. Didn't mention that someone came for our gun cameras this afternoon. Took them for maintenance. In 13 months, Nobody's ever touched our gun cameras before a patrol. If something happens tomorrow, tell Margaret I. The entry stopped mid-sentence. Emma turned the page blank. Every page after the 14th of October was empty, except for one thing. A photograph tucked into the back cover. 3 young men in flight suits, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. Someone had written on the back, Danny, Frankie, Bobby, the 14th of October, 1944. Last night at the Eagle's Nest. The last night. Her phone buzzed. Her sister Karen texting about estate paperwork. Emma ignored it, staring at the photograph. Her grandfather was the tall one in the middle, movie star, handsome with dark hair, and her father's exact same crooked smile. Frankie Holbrook on his left, stockier, laughing at something off camera. Bobby Whelan on the right, barely out of his teens, trying to look tough, but his eyes gave him away. He was scared. They'd all been scared. Emma pulled out her laptop, searching for information about the missing patrol. The official record was sparse. 3p. 51 Mustangs lost over Belgium. The 15th of October. 1944. No enemy contact reported. Search efforts unsuccessful. Presumed shot down by anti-aircraft fire. But her grandfather had written they weren't hunting anything. The route had been changed. The gun cameras removed. She kept digging, cross-referencing squadron records, mission logs, anything digitized from the 357th Fighter Group. Then she found it buried in a database of declassified documents. A report filed the 16th of October, 1944 by Colonel James Morrison. Lieutenants Garrett, Holbrook, and Whelan failed to return from routine patrol. Last radio contact at 1447 indicated no enemy engagement. Search teams found no wreckage in assigned patrol sector. Recommendation list, as MIA, presume KIA, no further resources to be allocated to recovery. One day, they'd searched for one day. Emma found herself angry, suddenly, and irrationally furious at this Colonel Morrison, who'd given up on 3 men so quickly. She searched his name, found his service record, promoted to general after the war, died in 1978, full military honors, buried at Arlington. But there was something else. A footnote in his biography. Morrison had been investigated in 1946 for irregularities in wartime intelligence operations, but cleared of all charges. The details were still classified. Emma's phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. Hello. Is this Emma Garrett? An elderly man's voice. Paper thin, but steady. Yes. My name is Walter Holbrook. I knew your grandfather. I've been waiting 75 years for someone from his family to call. Emma's heart stopped. You're Frankie's brother. I am 98 years old next month, if you can believe it. I heard about your father's passing. My condolences. But Emma, there are things you need to know about what happened to them. Things I promised I'd never tell unless someone asked the right questions. What questions? The ones your grandfather was asking the night before he died, about why they were being sent to Sector 7, about what was really there. His voice dropped. Can you come to Chicago? Some things shouldn't be said over the phone. Emma looked at the photograph again. 3 young men on their last night alive. I can be there tomorrow. Good. Bring the journal. And Emma, whatever else was in that trunk, bring that too. Your grandfather was smarter than they gave him credit for. If he kept something hidden all these years, there was a reason. After Walter hung up, Emma went back to the trunk. Under the uniform wrapped in oilcloth, she found what he meant. Her grandfather's service pistol still loaded. A map of Belgium with red marks in Sector 7. And strangest of all, a German officer's ring with an inscription she couldn't read. Trophies from kills she'd assumed at first, but Danny Garrett had disappeared the 15th of October, 1944. These items were dated the 16th of October. Someone had put them in his trunk, after he was already gone. The 6th of October, 2019, Chicago. The Lakeshore Senior Living Facility smelled like disinfectant and cafeteria food, but Walter Holbrook's room was different. Old Spice and leather, books stacked on every surface. He was waiting in a wheelchair by the window, and when Emma entered, she saw Frankie's face in his aged but unmistakable. "You look like Danny," he said immediately. "Same eyes. Probably break hearts the same way, too." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have a lot to cover, and I don't have many clear days left." Emma pulled out the journal. Walter's hand shook as he touched it. The 14th of October. I remember that date like my own birthday. Frankie called me that night from the base. 3:00 inches the morning my time. But he had to talk to someone. Walter's eyes went distant. Said they were being sent to Sector 7. Asked me to remember that if anything happened. What was in Sector 7 officially? Nothing. Just Belgian farmland recently liberated. But Frankie had friends in intelligence, real intelligence, not the sanitized briefings pilots got. Walter pulled out his own folder. Hands steadier now with purpose. My brother sent me this letter the 10th of October, 1944. Had to use our childhood code to write it. We made it up playing spies in the backyard. The letter looked like mundane military correspondence about food and weather, but Walter had penciled in translations between the lines. Project ongoing. Scientists relocated living cargo. Scientists? Emma asked. That's what we thought at first. Operation Paperclip before Paperclip officially existed. Grabbing German researchers before the Russians could. But that wasn't it. Walter showed her another document. This one from 1946. After the war, I did some digging. Sector 7 had been deliberately kept off Allied bombing runs since July 1944. Even when German forces moved through there, we never touched it. Emma studied the map. They were protecting something, or someone. Walter wheeled himself to his closet, pulled out a box from the bottom shelf. This came in the mail. November 1944. No return address. Inside was a photograph. An aerial view of what looked like a small compound, barely visible through trees, but clear enough to see the guard towers, the double fences, and in the corner of the photo, part of a wing with a visible serial number. Danny's plane. This was taken the 15th of October, 1944. Walter said. Your grandfather found something he wasn't supposed to see. The 15th of October, 1944. 6 a.m. Bodney Airfield, England. Danny Garrett couldn't shake the feeling. His teeth didn't hurt like Bobby claimed his did. But something was off. The morning briefing had been too quick, Morrison barely looking at them as he pointed to the map. Routine patrol Sector 7. Radio check every 15 minutes. That was it. No weather report, no intelligence update. No mention of why they were suddenly cleared for restricted airspace. Frankie caught his arm after briefing. Danny, this stinks. I know. We could have mechanical problems. All three of us. Tragic coincidence. Danny looked across the field where Bobby was doing his pre-flight check. Thorough as always, despite being the youngest. Kid still wrote his girlfriend's name on his plane before every flight. Sarah. Good girl from Iowa, who sent cookies every month. We go, Danny said, but we go careful, and we document everything. Gun cameras are gone. I know, but I've got my Kodak. Danny patted his flight jacket where the small camera Saturday anniversary present from Margaret. Wasn't supposed to bring it. But you're not stupid. Frankie grinned. But it didn't reach his eyes. If we see something, we photograph it. Then we come home and ask questions. They walked to their planes, ground crew finishing final checks. Danny's crew chief, Sergeant Peterson, pulled him aside. Lieutenant, about your fuel. What about it? Peterson looked uncomfortable. Had orders to give you extended range tanks. All three of you. That's for long-range escort duty. Not a patrol. Danny's stomach tightened. Extended range meant they were going somewhere far and staying a while, or someone wanted to make sure they had enough fuel to reach somewhere specific. Thanks, Peterson. Sir? Peterson grabbed his arm as he turned. That thing you asked me to look into last week about requisition orders? Yeah. Came from way up. Way up. Pentagon level. Peterson's voice dropped. Whatever you're doing today, someone in Washington personally signed off on it. The 6th of October, 2019, Chicago continued. The Pentagon? Emma looked up from the journal, but this was just a patrol. Walter laughed bitter and short. Nothing was just anything in October 1944. The war was almost won. Everyone was grabbing what they could before it ended. Intelligence, scientists, research. He paused. And prisoners? Prisoners. That compound in Sector 7 wasn't German. It was ours. Ultra-classified. Completely off the books. We were holding people there, Emma. People we didn't want anyone to know we had. Emma felt cold. Who? That's the $20 million question, isn't it? Frankie thought German scientists at first, but then he found out about the medical supplies being shipped there. Massive amounts. Either we were treating a lot of injured people or what? Walter's face darkened, or we were doing something that required a lot of medical equipment. Something that needed doctors and isolation and absolute secrecy. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging or end up like your grandfather. She showed Walter. He didn't look surprised. They're still watching, he said quietly. 75 years later. And someone still cares about what happened in Sector 7. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. Your grandfather found something there. Something worth killing 3 good men to keep quiet. And Emma, I don't think they were shot down. I think they were brought down. What do you mean? Walter wheeled back to his desk, pulled out a technical manual from 1944. See this P-51 Mustang fuel system. Now, Peterson, the crew chief. He told me something after the war. Said he found something odd when he was doing maintenance logs that morning. All 3 planes had been serviced the night before by mechanics he didn't recognize. They had installed something in the fuel systems. Governors, they said. To regulate flow. But governors don't go where they installed them. What goes there are fuel line cutoffs, remote activated. The kind you'd install if you wanted to shut down an engine from a distance. Emma stared at him. You're saying someone sabotaged their planes? I'm saying 3 planes don't lose power at the exact same second from mechanical failure. I'm saying gun cameras don't get removed for routine patrols. And I'm saying Danny Garrett was too good a pilot to just disappear unless someone wanted him to. Walter pulled out one more photograph. This one showed 3 young women at a funeral holding hands. Margaret Garrett, Bobby Sarah, and a woman Emma didn't recognize. Frankie's girl, Linda, Walter explained. This was taken at the memorial service, November 1944. See Margaret's expression? She's not grieving. She's angry. Because the night before this photo, she got Danny is less than Unk is greater than Yai's last letter. Mailed the 15th of October, the morning of the patrol. Walter handed her the letter still in its envelope, postmarked the 15th of October, 1944, 5:30 p.m. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then I was right to be worried. We're being sent somewhere today. That doesn't make sense. The colonel is lying about why. Someone removed our gun cameras so we can't record what we see. I'm going anyway because I'm a soldier, and those are my orders. But I'm not going stupid. I've hidden something in my footlocker. Peterson will get it to you. It's proof that we were sent deliberately to find something, or to be silenced for asking too many questions. Know that I love you and our baby more than life itself. But sometimes a man finds something bigger than his own life, something that needs to be exposed even if it costs everything. If I don't come home, ask Walter about Sector 7, ask him about the compound, and ask him why American planes have been protecting a German operation for 3 months. All my love. Emma's hands were shaking. A German operation. But you said it was ours. Walter's smile was grim. That's what we were supposed to think. But Danny figured it out. That's why they had to disappear. All three of them that same day before they could tell anyone what they'd really found. He pointed to the journal. Turn to the back cover. Feel the binding. Emma did. There was something hard under the leather. With Walter's penknife, she carefully cut the stitching. A small key fell out, along with a strip of microfilm. Danny was always clever, Walter said softly. Too clever for his own good. The microfilm was old but intact. Walter had an ancient reader in his closet. Been waiting to use this, he said. The images flickered to life. Aerial photographs clearer than the one Walter had. The compound in Sector 7. But these showed more detail. Guard towers with American soldiers, trucks with U.S. Army markings, and in one photo, visible through a window, medical equipment and what looked like operating tables. Dear God, Emma whispered. What were they doing there? That, Walter said, is what your grandfather died trying to find out. And Emma, someone went to enormous trouble to bury those planes and those boys rather than let them be found. Because even dead, they were evidence. Evidence of what? Walter looked out his window at Lake Michigan, gray and endless. The 15th of October, 1944. Your grandfather's last radio transmission was at 2:47 p.m. Said they were investigating something unusual below. Then nothing. But here's what nobody knows. I had a friend in the radio corps. He heard something else at 2:48 p.m. Not from our planes, from the ground, in English. Someone said, targets acquired, shutting them down now. Emma felt sick. They were murdered. Yes, but by who? And to protect what? Walter gripped her hand again. That key Danny hid. I recognize it. It's for a safety deposit box. Swiss style, probably set up through intelligence channels. Whatever else your grandfather found, he locked it away. And if it still exists, then someone's been paying to keep that box active for 5 years. Emma finished. Someone who's still sending threatening texts, Walter added. Someone who still has power. Emma's phone rang. Unknown number again. This time she answered. Miss Garrett. A woman's voice, cultured elderly. My name is Elsa Weber. I live in Belgium. I saw the planes fall in 1944. I know where they buried your grandfather, and I know why. Can you come to Brussels? There are things that shouldn't be forgotten, no matter how much certain people wish they would disappear. Emma looked at Walter. He nodded. I'll be there in 2 days, she said. After she hung up, Walter handed her a card. My nephew, former Army intelligence. If something happens to me before you get back, call him. He knows enough to help. You think something might happen? Walter smiled sadly. I'm 98 years old, and I just told you secrets people have killed to protect. Yes, Emma, I think something might happen. But frankly, my dear, it's about damn time. I've been carrying this alone for too long. As Emma left, Walter called out. The journal entry, the 14th of October. Danny never finished his sentence about Margaret. Want to know what he was going to write? She turned back. Tell Margaret I was right. We weren't sent to patrol. We were sent to disappear. Frankie told me that. Danny said it that night at the Eagle's Nest pub like he already knew. Emma felt the weight of the key in her pocket, the microfilm in her bag. 3 boys who'd known they were flying into a trap but went anyway because they were soldiers, because they trusted their country, because they never imagined their own side would kill them. She had a plane to catch. The 8th of October, 2019, Brussels, Belgium. Ilse Weber lived in a townhouse that had survived 2 wars, its bones older than memory. She answered the door herself, 93 years old, but standing straight, her eyes sharp as winter. You have his face, she said immediately. Danny is less than Unc. is greater than Yai's bones, his way of standing. Come. Her sitting room was a museum of carefully preserved history. Photographs covered one wall, resistance fighters, liberation celebrations, and one that made Emma stop. 3 P-51 Mustangs flying in perfect formation over Belgian countryside, on the 15th of October, 1944. Elsa said, I took that photo. I was 17. Working with the resistance, documenting German movements. But these weren't German planes. She poured tea with steady hands, then sat across from Emma. I need to tell you about Project Paperclip. She began the real one, not what they put in history books. Walter mentioned that the operation to recruit German scientists started earlier than they admit, much earlier. By October 1944, Americans were already grabbing anyone useful. Scientists, yes, but also doctors. Especially doctors who'd been working in the camps. Emma's stomach turned. Concentration camp doctors. The ones doing medical research, experiments on prisoners. Your government wanted that research, Emma. The data from hypothermia studies, high-altitude tests, disease immunity. Ilse's voice was flat, factual. But some of these doctors were too valuable to wait for war's end, so they made deals. Protection in exchange for cooperation. And Sector 7 was where they kept them. A transition facility hidden in liberated Belgium, close enough to Germany to extract targets far enough from the front lines to be safe. She stood, pulled down a map. Here. The compound was here. After the war, it became farmland again. But in October 1944, it was the most secret American facility in Europe. The 15th of October, 1944, 2:30 p.m., over Belgium. Danny, you seeing this? Frankie's voice crackled through the radio. Below them, where there should have been empty fields, was a complex of buildings surrounded by double fencing, guard towers at the corners, American vehicles in the yard, and something else. A medical truck with Red Cross markings, but the cross had been painted over hastily. I see it, Danny replied, pulling out his camera. Bobby, maintain altitude. We're just observing. Boss, we shouldn't be here, Bobby said, his voice tight. This is way off our patrol route. He was right. They'd been flying for 90 minutes, well into Sector 7, when they'd spotted the smoke, not battle smoke. Something industrial like burning medical waste. Danny had made the call to investigate. Now, circling at 8,000 feet, he wished he hadn't. Through his camera lens, he could see people in the yard, some in American uniforms, others in white coats, and in a corner behind another fence, figures in striped clothing, prisoners. Jesus Christ, Frankie breathed. Danny, those are I know what they are. Di's hands were steady on the camera, clicking frame after frame. Mark, coordinates. We need to. The engine coughed. Danny. Bobby's voice sharp now. Danny, I'm losing power. Me too, Frankie said. What the hell? Di's engine died completely. No warning, no smoke, just sudden silence. The propeller windmilled uselessly. He tried the restart. Nothing. Tried switching fuel tanks. Nothing. All three of us. Frankie's voice was incredulous. That's impossible, but it was happening. 3 planes, 3 dead engines, all at the same instant. Danny is less than Unc is greater than Y's mind raced through the checklist, even as his plane began its glide toward Earth. No engine meant no hydraulics. Limited control. They had maybe 6 minutes before they hit the ground. Stay together, he ordered. Triangular formation. We're going to put these birds down in that field to the northeast. Bobby, you call it in. Radio's dead too, Bobby reported, and Danny could hear the kid fighting panic. Of course it was. Whatever had killed their engines had killed their electronics too. They were flying dead metal through Belgian sky, and somebody below was watching. The 8th of October, 2019. Brussels continued. I saw them coming down, Elsa said. 3 planes in formation, No smoke, no battle damage, like birds that had forgotten how to fly. They passed right over our position. She pulled out a leather journal, her teenage handwriting still visible. I wrote everything. Time 2:47 p.m., 3 American fighters gliding northeast. No engine sound. Pilots visible, still alive, fighting for control. She looked up. That's important, Emma. They were alive, conscious, trying to save their planes. Where did they crash? That's the thing. They didn't crash. They landed hard, yes, but controlled in Farmer Mrs. Field about 2 kilometers from the compound. I ran there with my camera. She showed Emma another photograph. 3 Mustangs on the ground arranged in their defensive triangle, propellers bent, but fuselages intact. And in the distance, trucks approaching. American trucks. They got there fast, Elsa said. Too fast. Like they were waiting. Did you see the pilots? Elsa's face darkened. I saw them drag Danny from his cockpit. He was fighting them, shouting something about prisoners, about evidence. They hit him with a rifle butt. She paused. He went down, but he was breathing. All 3 were breathing when they put them in the truck. Emma felt cold. They were alive, very much alive, injured from the landing, but walking, talking. Your grandfather kept saying, I have photographs. People need to know. Then the officer, a colonel, I think, said something I'll never forget. Dead men don't have photographs. Morrison, Emma whispered. Colonel James Morrison. Yes, that was the name. Morrison. Elsa gripped Emma's hand. They drove the pilots back toward the compound. But here's what no one knows. I followed through the woods, staying hidden. I had to know what they'd do. She stood, walked to her window overlooking a peaceful street. The trucks went to a barn about half a kilometer from the main compound. They dragged the boys inside. I could hear shouting. Danny's voice angry. Then Frankie's trying to reason. Then Bobby, poor Bobby, just asking why. Then what? Gunshots. 3 of them spaced out, maybe 10 seconds apart. Emma closed her eyes. Her grandfather had been executed. Not shot down in combat, not killed in a crash, murdered by his own side. But that's not the end, Elsa continued, because an hour later I saw them bringing the bodies back out. And Emma, they were putting them back in the planes, strapping them into their cockpits. I realized they were going to bury them, make it look like they'd crashed and been buried by locals or hidden. No bullet wounds to the head would show on remains after years underground. But the journal page, the one that said, "They made us disappear." Elsa smiled grimly. Your grandfather was cleverer than they knew when they were dragging him from his plane. I saw him shove something into his jacket. I think he wrote that during the landing when he knew they were being brought down deliberately. His last act of defiance. Emma pulled out the key Walter had given her. He had this hidden in his journal. Hilsa examined it. Swiss bank. Probably Zurich. There's a number engraved. See, that's your box number. She looked up. Your grandfather set up a contingency, something they couldn't destroy even if they killed him. But how? When? The intelligence services had ways. Black accounts. Hidden deposits. If Danny was working with intelligence, and I think he was, given what he found, he could have set this up weeks before. Elsa moved to her desk, pulled out a card. This man can help. Swiss banker. Very discreet. His grandfather helped resistance fighters hide assets during the war. Emma took the card. Hans Müller, private banking, Zurich. There's one more thing, Elsa said. She pulled out a manila envelope, aged and sealed with wax. The 16th of October, 1944. A man came to our safe house. American intelligence, but not regular army. He gave me this, said to keep it safe. Said someday someone would come asking about the 3 pilots. He said to give them this. Emma opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed, subject operation, Prometheus. Classification, ultra-secret date, the 1st of October 1944. Phase 1 complete. German medical research personnel successfully extracted and relocated to Facility 7. Cooperation achieved through Project Leverage. Their families held in adjacent compound. Phase 2 initiating research to continue under American supervision. Initial subjects acquired from liberated camps. Cover story. Treating survivors. Reality. Continuing German immunity and enhancement studies under U.S. control. Risk assessment. 3 pilots from 357th showing unusual interest in sector. Garrett asking questions about restricted zones. Recommend permanent solution if they investigate. Authorization. J. Morrison. Colonel. U.S. Army Intelligence. Emma's hands were shaking. They were experimenting on Holocaust survivors. Using Nazi doctors to do it. Elsa confirmed your grandfather found the proof, and they killed him for it. Emma's phone rang. Walter's nephew. Miss Garrett, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Walter passed away this morning. Heart failure, they said. But Miss Garrett, he was fine yesterday, and his room has been searched. Someone was looking for something. Emma looked at Elsa, who was already standing, moving with surprising speed for her age. They know you're here, the old woman said. We need to go now. As they left through the back door, Emma saw a black car pulling up to the front. 2 men got out, moving with military precision despite their civilian clothes. My car's around the corner, Elsa said. We're going to Zurich. Whatever your grandfather hid in that bank, we're getting it before they do. As they drove away, Emma looked back to see the men breaking into Ilse's house, 75 years later, and someone was still willing to commit crimes to keep this secret. Why? She asked. Why does it still matter? Elsa's laugh was bitter. Because Operation Prometheus didn't end in 1944. It evolved, changed names, changed locations, but never stopped. Your grandfather found the beginning of something that's still happening. And Emma, some of the people involved are still alive, still powerful, still protected. She handed Emma a loaded pistol from her glove compartment. Your grandfather couldn't shoot back. You can. The road to Zurich stretched ahead, and somewhere behind them, hunters were already following. The 9th of October, 2019, Swiss border. They ditched Ilse's car in Strasbourg, switching to a rental under a fake name Elsa produced with disturbing ease. Resistance habits die hard, she'd said. Now approaching Zurich at dawn, Emma kept checking the mirrors, while Elsa dozed in the passenger seat, pistol still in her lap. Emma's phone had been buzzing with texts from unknown numbers. Stop now. This is your only warning. Then your grandfather was a traitor who had to be silenced. And finally, you have 1 hour to turn around. She'd turned the phone off after that. We're here, Ilse said, suddenly alert as they entered Zurich's financial district. Park, underground, never on the street. The bank was old money incarnate, marble and brass, hushed voices, a place where fortunes older than countries slept in vaults. Hans Müller was waiting, having responded to Ilse's encrypted message sent from a gas station payphone. Miss Garrett, he said quietly, leading them to a private elevator. My grandfather helped yours establish this account in September 1944. We've been maintaining it ever since, per his instructions. For 75 years, the account was well-ended, and the instructions were very specific. Only blood family could access it, and only with the original key. He glanced at the men in suits, watching from the lobby. You have followers. Can they stop us? Not here. Swiss banking laws are absolute, but afterward he led them deeper into the building, past modern offices, into older sections, pre-war architecture. Your grandfather was paranoid, justifiably it seems. The box is in our oldest vault. The 15th of October, 1944. 2:45 p.m. Moments before engine failure. Danny had seconds to decide. Below them, the compound sprawled like a cancer on Belgian soil. His camera was almost out of film, but he'd gotten enough. proof of American trucks at a secret facility, proof of prisoners in striped uniforms, proof of what looked like medical experiments continuing under new management. He pulled out his notebook, scrolling fast. They made us disappear. No, that was wrong. They hadn't done it yet, but they would. He could feel it in his bones, the way Bobby felt danger in his teeth, the removed gun cameras, the isolation, the extended fuel tanks that Peterson had warned him about. He tore the page out, folded it small, shoved it inside his jacket just as the engine died. Then, falling through Belgian sky, he made a choice. The microfilm from his camera. He pulled it out, wrapped it in waterproof cloth from his survival kit, and hid it in his boot. If they searched him, they'd find the camera. They might not check his boots. "Stay with me," he called to Frankie and Bobby, though the radios were dead. But they knew. 3 sets of hands fighting dead controls, working to keep the planes level to stay together, even as they fell. The 9th of October, 2019, Zurich continued. The vault was a cavern of steel and shadow. Box 4447 was small, unremarkable, one among thousands. Emma's key turned smoothly despite the decades. Inside, 3 reels of microfilm, a sealed envelope, and a Colt 45 with 1 bullet missing. Mueller produced a microfilm reader. We keep them for the older accounts. The first reel flickered to life. Documents, hundreds of them. Transfer orders for German medical personnel, signed by Colonel Morrison. Agreements for continued research under American supervision. Lists of test subjects identified only by numbers but with a notation. Sourced from liberated camps, told they're receiving treatment. "Dear God," Emma whispered. The second reel was photographs. The compound from every angle, the medical facilities, and then the horror. Emaciated figures on operating tables, American doctors observing while German researchers worked. One photo showed Morrison himself watching through observation glass as someone operated on a skeletal child. "Your grandfather got inside," Elsa breathed. "How?" The third reel answered that Dye's handwritten report. The 30th of September, 1944. Made contact with intelligence officer who claims Morrison is running unauthorized operation. Gave me camera press credentials. Says he needs proof before he can act. Will attempt to infiltrate Sector 7 on next patrol. The 8th of October, 1944. Morrison suspects something. Moved up our patrol date. Removing gun cameras. This is a setup. The 14th of October, 1944. They're going to kill us tomorrow. I know it. Hidden evidence with Swiss account Walter knows about. If something happens, everything's here. Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a list of names, American officials. Some she recognized from history books, senators, generals, future cabinet members, all connected to Operation Prometheus. "This is why they're still scared," she said. "Some of these families are still in power." Mueller cleared his throat. "There's something else. Your grandfather left instructions. If the box was ever opened, I was to give you this." Another envelope sealed differently. Inside, a single key and an address in Belgium. "That's 10 kilometers from where the planes were found," Elsa said, studying it. "What's there?" "According to our records, your grandfather purchased a small plot of land there in September 1944. Through intermediaries, of course. It's been maintained by a local trust." Miller pulled up modern satellite images. "It appears to be just forest now." Emma pocketed everything. "We need to go there." "It's a trap," Elsa warned. "Maybe. But my grandfather hid something else. Something he couldn't put in a bank." They left through the bank's garage, Muller's security helping them evade the watchers. But Emma knew they were just buying time. Whoever was behind this had resources, reach, patience. "There's something I haven't told you," Elsa said as they drove toward Belgium. "The compound, Sector 7. It didn't close after your grandfather died. It expanded, operated until 1947. Then everyone involved disappeared. New names, new lives. scattered across America. How do you know? Because I hunted them for 20 years. I tracked every doctor, every administrator. Most died naturally, but some, she smiled coldly. Some had accidents, car crashes, falls, heart attacks at unusually young ages. Emma looked at this 3-year-old woman with new eyes. You killed them? I executed war criminals who were living free in suburbia. Your grandfather would have done the same if he'd lived. She paused. There's one left, the last one who was there when they murdered the pilots. Morrison's dead. Morrison was middle management. I'm talking about the doctor who ran the experiments. Dr. Theodore Blackwood. He's 97, living in a veteran's home in Virginia under another name, still protected by the CIA. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from the block number. Dr. Blackwood sends his regards. He's eager to meet Danny Garrett's granddaughter. They knew where she was going. They were letting her come. It's still a trap, Elsa said. I know. Emma checked the pistol Elsa had given her. But some traps are worth walking into. The Belgian countryside rolled past, peaceful and green, hiding decades of secrets beneath its soil. Somewhere ahead was whatever Danny Garrett had thought important enough to buy land for, to hide so carefully that even his killers hadn't found it. And somewhere behind them, the last architect of Operation Prometheus was waiting. The sun was setting as they approached the coordinates, painting the sky the color of old blood. Emma thought about 3 young pilots seeing this same sunset, knowing they wouldn't see another. She was going to finish what her grandfather started, even if it killed her. The 9th of October, 2019. Belgian forest. Night. The land Danny Garrett had purchased was nothing special. 5 acres of dense forest, untouched since the war. Emma and Elsa left the car on a dirt road and walked in, using Emma's phone flashlight, until Elsa grabbed her wrist. No lights. If they're watching, we go dark. They moved through trees by moonlight, following GPS coordinates to the center of Danny. Is less than Unk is greater than Yai's plot. There, almost invisible under 75 years of growth, was a concrete cap, like a well cover but larger. A bunker, Elsa whispered. Small one, probably vermocked originally. Emma found the edges cleared away decades of leaves and dirt. There was a hatch locked with a mechanism that matched the second key from the bank. It opened with a grinding protest of old metal. The smell hit them first. Stale air, rust, something chemical. Emma dropped in, landing on concrete. The beam of her flashlight revealed a single room, maybe 10x 10 feet, and along one wall filing cabinets. American military issue 1944. He had help, Elsa said, climbing down. Your grandfather couldn't have done this alone. Emma opened the first cabinet. Files, hundreds of them. Medical records from the compound. Not copies. Originals somehow smuggled out. Each one detailed experiments performed on prisoners who'd been told they were receiving treatment. Hypothermia studies. Disease resistance. Surgical experiments that made Emma's stomach turn. Look at this. Elsa held up a folder marked with red stamps. Subject 247, a child, maybe 8 years old. She stopped reading, her face pale even in the flashlight beam. The second cabinet held photographs Danny hadn't been able to microfilm. These were worse than what was in the bank. Clear evidence of American doctors working alongside Nazi researchers. Morrison observing, taking notes. But the third cabinet was different. Personnel files, but not from 1944. Some were dated as late as 1960. These are CIA files, Emma breathed. How did my grandfather? He didn't. A new voice from above. Male, elderly, but strong. I did. Emma raised Ilsa's pistol as a figure descended into the bunker. An old man in an expensive coat, moving carefully but steadily. When he reached the bottom and turned, Emma saw a face from the photographs. Older, weathered, but unmistakable. Doctor, Blackwood, she said. Actually, it's Dr. Martin Shepard now, has been since 1947. He held his hands up, showing he was unarmed. I've been waiting for someone to find this place for 75 years. You killed my grandfather. Morrison killed your grandfather. I was just a young doctor, horrified by what I was seeing, but too terrified to speak up. He moved slowly to the filing cabinets until I met someone brave enough to do what I couldn't. The 15th of October. 1944. 1:0 p.m. 2 hours before the patrol. Theodore Blackwood, he hadn't become Martin Shepard yet, watched through the window as 3p-51 seconds prepared for takeoff. Morrison had just briefed him. The pilots had been asking questions. They would investigate Sector 7. They would have to be silenced. I can't be part of this, he told Morrison. You already are, Doctor. Every experiment you've observed, every note you've taken, makes you complicit. Besides, Morrison had smiled coldly. Your family thinks you're a hero serving your country. Would hate for them to learn you're helping Nazi doctors continue their work. But Blackwood had already made his choice. The night before, he'd met secretly with someone from the resistance, a teenage girl named Elsa, who'd been smuggling information out of the compound. He'd given her everything he could copy, told her about the planned murder of the pilots. I can't stop it, he'd said, but I can document it. Make sure evidence survives. Now, watching the plane's taxi, he felt the weight of his cowardice. 3 men about to die, and he was going to let it happen to preserve evidence. The 9th of October, 2019, Belgian bunker continued. You... Emma stared at him. You were the intelligence contact Danny mentioned. I fed him information for weeks, helped him set up the Swiss account, even arranged for this bunker. Claimed it was for storing medical supplies. Blackwood's voice was heavy with decades of guilt. I thought if I preserved enough evidence, someday justice would come. Instead, you kept working for them. Ilse spat. I tracked you. CIA MK-Ultra, decades of experiments because they had my family. The old man's composure cracked. Morrison made sure of that. My wife, my children, there was always an implied threat. So, yes, I kept working. But I also kept copying files, adding them here, building a case that would destroy everyone involved. He pulled out a modern USB drive. Everything's digitized now. Names, dates, financial records, showing the program never really ended. It just got better at hiding. Emma kept the gun on him. Why should I trust you? Because I'm 97 years old and I've been dying for 3 years. Slow cancer eating me from inside. Poetic justice, really? He coughed, specks of blood on his handkerchief. I've outlived almost everyone from Prometheus. Morrison, the other doctors, the administrators. But their children are still in power. Senators, CIA, directors, federal judges, all protected by the secret their fathers killed to keep. So, expose it, Emma said. I tried twice. The journalists I approached died in accidents. The files I sent to the FBI disappeared. He sat heavily on a crate. They're too powerful, too connected, unless what? Unless the exposure comes from someone they can't silence. Someone with an unimpeachable claim to the truth. He looked at Emma, the granddaughter of a murdered war hero, with evidence her grandfather died collecting. Emma's phone buzzed. She turned it back on to navigate. And now, messages flooded in, photos of her apartment ransacked, her office at the university searched, her sister's house under surveillance. They're threatening my family. They always do, Blackwood said. It's how they've kept this quiet for 7 decades. Elsa had been silent, studying files. Now she looked up. There's something else here. Financial records, the experiments. They were funded by American corporations, pharmaceutical companies that are still major government contractors. Follow the money, Blackwood nodded. Always follow the money. Those companies made billions from research that started in concentration camps. Some of their best-selling drugs came from data collected through torture. Above them, car engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. "They found us," Hilsa said. Blackwood smiled sadly. "I told them had to. They have my granddaughter, 13 years old. Same age I was when this started." He pulled out a phone, showing a video. A young girl terrified in what looked like a warehouse. "You son of a Emma," raised the gun. "Shoot me if you want. I deserve it. But listen first. They think I'm delivering you and the evidence, but I'm not that brave or that stupid." He pressed something on his phone. "I just uploaded everything to 50 different news outlets, WikiLeaks, and a dozen foreign intelligence services. It's done. In 1 hour, the whole world will know about Operation Prometheus. Car doors slamming above, boots on ground. They'll kill us all," Elsa said. "No. Too public now. They'll arrest us. Claim we're foreign agents. Terrorism. Something. But the evidence is already out there." He looked at Emma. "Your grandfather would be proud. He started this. You finished it." Men in tactical gear dropped into the bunker, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Emma set down her pistol. Hands up. As they zip-tied her wrists, she saw one of them. Young, professional. Just following orders. Like Morrison had been, like Blackwood had been, like her grandfather had been, until he'd found something worth dying to expose. They dragged them up into the night, black SUVs, no plates, but also in the distance, regular Belgian police cars and news vans, somehow already there. "Doctor for Blackwood," a reporter shouted. "Is it true about the American experiments?" The tactical team tried to hustle them into vehicles, but more reporters appeared. Cameras, microphones, lights. Someone had tipped off the media. Probably Blackwood's final play. "My grandfather was murdered," Emma shouted before they could push her into an SUV. "Lieutenant Danny Garrett killed by his own country for discovering Operation Prometheus." The cameras swung to her. The tactical team hesitated. They couldn't just disappear her on live television. In that moment of confusion, sirens. Belgian federal police surrounding the black SUVs. A standoff in the forest where 3 pilots had been murdered 75 years ago. Emma's phone, somehow still in her pocket, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check the news." Someone held up a tablet. Breaking news on every channel. Leaked documents about Operation Prometheus. American experiments on Holocaust survivors. The cover-up. The murders. Danny Garrett's photo, young and handsome in his pilot's uniform, was on CNN. The tactical team leader spoke into his radio, then slowly lowered his weapon. "We're withdrawing," he announced. They left, disappearing into the night as quickly as they'd come. The Belgian police took Emma, Ilsa, and Blackwood into protective custody instead. "It's over," Blackwood said in the police car. 75 years of secrets finally in the light. But Emma knew better. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The evidence was out, but justice, real justice, that would take longer. There would be investigations, trials, denials. Some people would pay, others would escape. But 3 pilots who died for the truth would finally be acknowledged as heroes, not casualties. That was a start. The 10th of October, 2019, Belgian Federal Police Station, Ypres. Emma hadn't slept. She sat in the small interview room watching sunrise paint the walls, while Elsa dozed in her chair. Blackwood was in medical custody. His cancer more advanced than he'd let on, requiring immediate treatment. The door opened. A woman entered. 50 seconds. Sharp suit, American accent. "Miss Garrett, I'm Deputy Director Sarah Coleman, CIA. We need to talk about what you've done." "What I've done?" Emma's voice was raw. "My grandfather was murdered. Your grandfather was investigating classified operations during wartime. The situation was complex." "Complex?" Emma laughed. "Brittle and sharp. That's what you call murdering 3 pilots. Coleman sat down, placing a tablet on the table. The documents, Dr. Blackwood released, are causing an international incident. 3 allied governments are demanding explanations. Stock markets are crashing. Pharmaceutical companies that employ millions are facing bankruptcy. Good is it? Those companies make insulin, cancer drugs, antibiotics that save lives. Coleman pulled up headlines. Patients are already panicking, refusing medications because they're afraid they were developed through torture. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. She hadn't thought about that. Your grandfather stumbled into something that was already in motion, Coleman continued. Ugly, yes, wrong, absolutely, but stopping it in 1944 wouldn't have saved those prisoners. They were dying anyway. The research, horrible as it was, led to medical breakthroughs that have saved millions. You're justifying it. I'm explaining why 3 idealistic pilots had to die to protect a greater good. Coleman's voice softened. Your grandfather was a hero, Miss Garrett, but heroes don't always get to live. The 15th of October. 1944. 30 p.m. The barn, near Sector 7. Danny came to with blood in his eyes, and Morrison standing over him. The barn smelled like hay and motor oil. Frankie was unconscious, slumped against a post. Bobby was awake, trying not to cry. His left arm bent wrong from the landing. You couldn't just follow orders, Morrison said. He looked tired, older than his 40 years. Simple patrol. That's all you had to do. Those are prisoners. Danny spat blood. Americans experimenting on Holocaust survivors, dying survivors, people who wouldn't last another week. Their deaths are giving us data that will save American lives. That's what the Nazis said. Morrison hit him again, splitting his lip. We are nothing like them. We're using their research to ensure it wasn't all for nothing. Those people suffered anyway. At least now their suffering has meaning. You're insane. I'm practical. Do you know what the Soviets are doing? They grabbed every researcher they could find. If we don't keep pace, the next war will be fought with weapons we don't understand, diseases we can't cure. Morrison pulled out his sidearm. I don't enjoy this. You're good men, but you destroy something essential to America's survival. We have photographs, Danny said. Hidden. If we disappear, they'll surface. Morrison smiled sadly. No, they won't. We found your camera. The film you hid in your boot. Your friend at the Swiss bank has been dealt with. There's nothing left. But Danny had one card left. Peterson knows. My crew chief told him everything this morning. Morrison's face changed. You're lying. Check. Morrison stepped outside, spoke to someone. Danny could hear rapid radio chatter. Then Morrison returned, his face darker. Peterson's in custody, but you did tell him. He raised his pistol. This could have been clean. Now it's going to be messy. Wait. Frankie spoke up, finally conscious. You need us alive. 3 missing pilots is one thing. 3 dead pilots with bullet wounds. That's harder to explain. Not if you're never found. Our planes, Bobby said through tears. People saw them land. Elsa, the resistance girl. She photographed them. Morrison hesitated. Danny could see him calculating. Bury us with the planes, Danny said suddenly. Make it look like we crashed and locals buried us. Hidden grave discovered years later. No bullet wounds will show on skeletons. Danny, what are you? Frankie started. It's the only way our families get closure, Danny said, looking at Morrison. Otherwise, we're just missing forever. My daughter grows up not knowing. Bobby's girl waits her whole life. Give them bodies to bury, Morrison. You're not a monster. Morrison lowered his gun slightly. You'd cooperate. Make this clean. What choice do we have? Danny's voice was hollow. You're going to kill us either way. The 10th of October, 2019. Belgian Federal Police Station continued. He made a deal, Emma said, understanding flooding through her. My grandfather negotiated his own murder. Coleman nodded. Morrison's private notes recovered from his estate. Your grandfather convinced him that 3 bodies found years later in their planes would raise fewer questions than 3 pilots vanishing completely. Emma felt sick, and Morrison agreed with conditions. The pilots would write final letters home, dated before the flight. They'd help position the planes for burial. In exchange, Morrison promised the bodies would eventually be found and returned home, but they weren't found for 65 years. Morrison died in 1978. His successors saw no benefit in revealing the graves. Coleman pulled up another file. This is your grandfather's last letter. Never sent. Found in Morrison's files. Emma read her grandfather's handwriting. My darling Margaret, if you're reading this, I've gone down fighting. Know that I love you and our unborn child more than life itself. Tell her, I'm certain it's a girl that her father died trying to do right. I've discovered something terrible. Our own people doing unforgivable things. I tried to stop it, but some sins are too big for one man to fight. They're going to kill me, for what I know. Frankie and Bobby, too. We're going to die together, at least. Don't mourn too long. Remarry. Be happy. Let our daughter grow up believing her father was a hero who died in combat. It's cleaner than the truth. Forever yours. Danny. Emma was crying now. Couldn't stop. He knew exactly what was going to happen. They all did, Coleman said softly. The 3 of them spent their last hour planning how to hide evidence, writing letters, making peace. Your grandfather used his own blood to write that note you found. They made us disappear, hid it inside his jacket where he knew it would survive. Ilsa woke, saw Emma crying. What's happening? Coleman stood. We're prepared to make a deal. The evidence is out. Can't be stopped. But we can control the narrative. Your grandfather and his friends die as heroes who discovered a rogue operation. Morrison becomes the sole villain. The institutions survive, and if I refuse, then we reveal the full truth. That your grandfather was planning to desert. That he'd been selling information to Soviet contacts. That his death was justified, execution of a traitor. That's a lie. Truth is what we document it to be. Coleman headed for the door. You have 1 hour to decide, hero or traitor. Your grandfather's legacy is in your hands. After she left, Emma sat in crushing silence. Elsa took her hand. They have no power now, the old woman said. The evidence Blackwood released proves the experiments happened, not who was responsible. They can spin it any way they want. Emma thought about her father growing up believing his father died a hero. Her sister's children proud of their war hero great-grandfather. Her phone buzzed. A text from Karen, her sister Emma. The news is saying horrible things about Grandpa Danny. Please tell me it's not true. Emma looked at the photo of 3 young men, arms around each other hours before they died. They'd known what was coming, chosen how to face it, made peace with death to protect something bigger than themselves. They were barely older than boys. Elsa said quietly. Your grandfather was 24, Frankie was 25, Bobby was 19. Just children, really. Old enough to die for their country, old enough to be murdered for the truth. The door opened again. Not Coleman, a younger agent with a laptop. Miss Garrett, there's something you need to see. Live feed from Arlington National Cemetery. On the screen, hundreds of people gathering at Morrison's grave. Veterans, families, regular citizens. Someone had spray-painted murderer across his headstone. Signs read justice for the forgotten 3. And Danny Garrett was a hero. It's happening at war memorials across the country, the agent said. Your grandfather's story has gone viral. People are demanding full disclosure. Emma felt something shift. The narrative was already escaping CIA control. The truth, messy and painful as it was winning. I want to see Blackwood, she said. Before I decide anything. The agent looked uncertain, but made a call. 20 minutes later, They were in a hospital room where Blackwood lay dying, the machines keeping him barely alive. "Emma," he whispered, "I'm sorry for all of it. Tell me how they actually died. The truth." Blackwood closed his eyes. Morrison gave them a choice. Execution in the barn, bodies burned, families never knowing, or cooperation. Help stage their own deaths, write letters home, die with dignity. And they chose. Your grandfather chose for all of them. Said they'd do it Morrison's way. But on one condition, they wanted to be buried together in their planes, positioned so they were protecting each other. Morrison agreed. Emma could barely breathe. How? Lethal injection. Morphine overdose. They sat in their cockpits, held hands through the open canopies, and Blackwood started crying. This ancient dying man. Your grandfather's last words were, "Tell our families we weren't afraid." Were they afraid? Terrified. But they sang as the drugs took effect. Their squadron song, something about flying home. Emma broke, sobbed for 3 boys who died singing, holding hands, trying to be brave. Elsa held her as she cried. When she could speak again, Emma made her decision. "I'll take Coleman's deal, but with conditions. Full military honors for all 3 pilots. Their names on the wall of honor, and the truth, the real truth, sealed for 50 years. Let their great-grandchildren decide what to do with it." Blackwood managed to smile. "Your grandfather would be proud." He understood. Sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. That night, Emma stood where the 3 planes had been found. The Belgian government had already announced plans for a memorial. 3 young men who died together rather than betray their principles, even when those principles killed them. Her phone rang. "Coleman, we accept your terms. The ceremony is next month. All 3 families will be there." Emma hung up and looked at the stars. Somewhere, up there, maybe 3 pilots were finally flying home. The 15th of October, 2019. Brussels. Emma met Bobby Whelan's granddaughter at a small cafe near the European Parliament. Sarah Whelan Morrison, she'd kept both names, was 68, a retired teacher with her grandfather's eyes and careful way of holding herself. "He never married my grandmother," Sarah said, stirring her coffee. "She waited 3 years, then finally accepted she'd been waiting for a ghost." Emma pushed the folder across the table. Documents Blackwood had released. Photos from the crash site. Bobby's last letter home, that Morrison never sent. Sarah read in silence, then looked up with tears streaming down her face. 19 years old. My God. He was just 19. He was brave. They all were. Were they? Sarah's voice turned bitter. Or were they just 3 boys who trusted the wrong people and died for it? Emma didn't have an answer for that. The 15th of October, 1944. 3:45 p.m. The final moments. They'd moved the planes into position first. That terrible triangle formation that would puzzle investigators decades later. Morrison's men helped. Everyone understanding this was theater now, staging a mystery that might never be solved. Bobby threw up twice from fear. Frankie held him, told him stories about home, about the garage they'd opened together after the war. Danny wrote in his journal with his own blood from a deliberately reopened cut, hands shaking but determined. "We need to make this look right," Morrison said, almost gentle now, "like you crashed and were buried. Your positions matter." "We know," Danny said. He'd already thought it through. "We'll be in our cockpits, strapped in, looking at each other. Anyone who finds us will know we died together." Doctor Blackwood prepared the injections, hands trembling. "It won't hurt," he promised. "Just like going to sleep." "Doc," Frankie said, "when they find us, however many years from now, make sure they know we weren't cowards. We didn't run. I will." They climbed into their cockpits one last time. Danny in the lead position, Frankie on his right, Bobby on his left. The canopies stayed open so they could see each other. "Remember that night in London?" Frankie called out. "When Bobby got so drunk he tried to fight the British pilot." "He was insulting American beer," Bobby protested. And they laughed. Actually laughed, sitting in their death traps. Danny pulled out Margaret's photo, kissed it, tucked it into the instrument panel where it would be found. "Tell our families we love them," he said to Blackwood. The doctor moved between the planes with his syringe. Bobby first. The kid was shaking too hard to wait. Then Frankie, who squeezed Danny, his less than Unc, his greater than Yai's hand one last time. "See you on the other side, brother." Finally, Danny. As the needle went in, he looked at Morrison. "This won't stay secret. Someday someone will dig us up and ask why, and when they do, the truth will bury you." Morrison said nothing. The morphine was warm, spreading through Danny's veins like summer honey. He could hear Bobby singing, scared but trying, their squadron song about silver wings and golden mornings. Frankie joined in, his baritone steady. Danny added his voice, looking at his brothers as the world began to fade. "Silver wings and morning light, carry me home through endless night. When my flying days are done, I'll chase no more the morning Sunday." The last thing Danny saw was Bobby reaching out his hand and Frankie taking it and then reaching for Danny's. And they held on as the darkness came, three boys refusing to let go of each other even in death. The 15th of October, 2019. Brussels continued. "They held hands?" Sarah asked, voice breaking. According to Blackwood, when Morrison's men positioned them for burial, they had to break their fingers to separate them. Sarah stood abruptly, walked to the window. "My grandmother used to say Bobby had the most beautiful hands. Artist's hands, she called them. He was going to be an architect after the war." Sarah, 19 years old. She turned back angry now. 19. And they executed him for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, for refusing to stay quiet about war crimes. Same difference. Sarah sat back down, pulled out her own folder. "I've been doing research since the news broke. Do you know what happened to the compound after the 15th of October? Emma shook her head. "It operated for 3 more years. Hundreds of test subjects. The data they collected became the foundation for CIA's MK-Ultra program. Every conspiracy theorist who said the government was conducting mind control experiments, they were right. The families of the other test subjects, most don't know. The few who do were paid off or threatened into silence." Sarah pulled out a list. "But I've been contacting them quietly. We're organizing. To do what? To demand real justice, not just ceremonies and apologies. Criminal prosecution for anyone still alive who was involved. Reparations for the family's full disclosure of all related programs." Emma's phone buzzed. "Coleman texting the memorial ceremony is confirmed for the 11th of November. Veterans Day. The president will attend. They want to make this about patriotism," Emma said, showing Sarah the text. 3 heroes who died for their country. Instead of 3 boys murdered by their country, Sarah pulled out another document. "This is a lawsuit. Wrongful death, conspiracy, violation of international law. 17 families have already signed on. It'll take years, decades, maybe. My grandfather waited 75 years to come home. I can wait as long as it takes for justice." That evening, Emma visited the field where the planes had been found. The Belgian government had already erected a temporary memorial, 3 white crosses with their names, flowers from locals who remembered the day the Americans didn't come to liberate them because they'd been buried a few miles away. An old man was standing there, mid-90s at least, leaning on a cane. "I helped bury them," he said in accented English when he saw Emma. "I was 20. Morrison's men made us help. My father and uncle and me told us it was classified that we'd be shot if we ever spoke of it. Why tell me now? Because I'm 95 and what can they do to me?" He pointed with his cane. "Your grandfather there in the middle, even dead." He looked angry like he wasn't finished fighting. He wasn't. "The young one, Bobby. He looked peaceful like a child sleeping. We had to arrange him 3 times because Morrison said it didn't look natural enough. The old man spat. Natural. 3 boys in their planes underground. Did Morrison say anything? When it was done, he said they were traitors who'd endangered the war effort. But his men, the ones who'd done the burying, they didn't believe him. You could see it. They knew they just hidden a crime. As the sun set, Emma stood among the crosses and called Coleman. The lawsuit Sarah Whelan is filing. You know about it. We're aware. I want in. I want every document, every file, every piece of evidence about the 15th of October, 1944. That wasn't our deal. Our deal was for the ceremony. This is separate. You want to control the narrative? Give me the truth to work with. Otherwise, I'll let Sarah's lawyers dig it up in court publicly, messily. Coleman was quiet for a long moment. I'll see what I can do. After she hung up, Emma touched her grandfather's cross. The wood was rough, temporary, but someone had carved into it. They made us disappear, but we didn't go quietly. She thought about Danny as less than Unk is greater than his final moments, holding his brother's hands, singing about flying home. 24 years old, knowing he was about to die. And his last act was to comfort Bobby, to stay connected to Frankie. That was the real crime, she realized, not just murdering 3 pilots, but forcing them to participate in their own disappearance, making them complicit in their own eraser. But they'd fought back the only way they could, with evidence hidden in boots and blood, with positioned planes that would raise questions, with held hands that said, "We were here. We were together. We mattered." Tomorrow she would fly home and start fighting the legal battle. But tonight she sat in a Belgian field and sang softly the squadron song Blackwood had remembered. Silver wings in morning light carry me home through endless night. When my flying days are done, I'll chase no more the morning sun, but rest with brothers. Duty done until the morning comes again, and silver wings fly home. Somewhere in the darkness, she could almost hear 3 young voices joining in. The 10th of November, 2019. Indianapolis. Emma stood in her father's empty house, sorting through what remained. The estate sale had taken most everything, but she'd kept the trunk. Danny is less than Unk, is greater than Y's journal. The photographs. Tomorrow was the memorial at Arlington. Tonight, she couldn't sleep. Her phone rang. Frankie Holbrook's grandson, David, calling from Seattle. "Emma, I just got off the phone with the Pentagon. They're offering my family $2 million to sign an NDA about Grandpa Frankie's death." What? Complete silence about Operation Prometheus. The murder. Everything. In exchange for what they're calling restoration of benefits and compensation for administrative errors. His voice was bitter. "They're trying to buy us." Emma sank into her father's old chair. "Are you going to take it?" "My mother wants to. She's 73. Has medical bills. $2 million would change everything for her." He paused. But Grandpa Frankie didn't die for money. He died for truth. The lawsuit Sarah's filing could take 20 years and get us nothing or $2 million now, and we pretend he died a hero in combat. David's voice cracked. "What would you do?" Emma thought about Danny as less than Unk is greater than Yee's journal, his careful handwriting documenting things he knew would kill him. "I don't know. I really don't." After David hung up, Emma opened her laptop. 17 families had joined the lawsuit, but she could see the cracks forming. The government had unlimited resources, unlimited time. They could wait out elderly widows and children with medical bills. Her phone buzzed. A text from Coleman. "Final offer, $3 million to each family. Full military honors, heroic narrative preserved. Or we go to trial and reveal everything, including things you don't know yet." Things she didn't know yet. The 15th of October, 1944, 4 p.m. After the injections, Morrison stood over the 3 bodies, checking pulses. Danny was still breathing, barely, fighting the morphine with sheer will. His eyes were open, unfocused, but aware. He's still conscious, Blackwood said, alarmed. Not for long. Morrison leaned down close to Danny as less than unk is greater than Yai's face. You want to know the truth, Garrett? The real truth? This program started before the war. Americans and Germans working together on eugenics research. We didn't capture these doctors. We invited them. The war just interrupted our collaboration. Dai's lips moved. No sound. Your president knows. Roosevelt himself signed off on bringing them over. This goes all the way to the top, Garrett. You never had a chance. Danny is less than unk is greater than Yai's hand twitched, fingers scraping against something in his pocket. Morrison didn't notice. He was already turning away, giving orders about the burial. But Blackwood saw Danny pull something out with his last conscious movement. A small metal capsule, the kind intelligence used for microfilm. Danny is less than unk is greater than Yai's eyes met his for 1 second. Please. Before they finally closed, when Morrison's men carried Danny to his plane, Blackwood slipped the capsule from Danny as less than unk is greater than Yai's dead fingers. Later, much later, he would hide it in the Swiss bank, evidence that even Morrison didn't know Danny had carried. The 10th of November, 2019 continued. Emma's doorbell rang at midnight. She opened it to find an elderly woman, elegant despite her age, with Sarah Wand standing beside her. Miss Garrett, I'm Elizabeth Holbrook, Frankie's widow. Emma's mouth fell open, but the record said Frankie wasn't married. We married in secret at the 13th of October, 1944, 2 days before he died. Elizabeth's smile was sad. He knew something was going to happen. Said he wanted me to have widow's benefits if he didn't come back. She handed Emma a photograph. Frankie and Elizabeth at what looked like a hurried ceremony. Danny and Bobby as witnesses, all of them trying to smile. They all knew, Elizabeth said, that last week they all knew they were marked. Danny made Frankie marry me. Said at least one of them should leave a legal widow behind. Why didn't you come forward before? Morrison visited me. November 1944. Said if I ever revealed the marriage, they'd charge Frankie posthumously with treason. Said I'd lose everything, be imprisoned as an accomplice. She touched the photo gently. I was 22 and pregnant. I kept quiet. Sarah took Elizabeth's arm. She's been hiding for 75 years. But now I'm 97, and I want the truth told before I die. Elizabeth pulled out a thick envelope. Frankie's real letters, not the ones Morrison fabricated, but the ones he actually wrote that last week. Emma read them, tears blurring her vision. Frankie had documented everything, the removed gun cameras, the changed flight path, his certainty they were being set up, but also his love for Elizabeth, his hope for their unborn child, his determination to face whatever came with dignity. If they kill us, Lisbeth, know that we didn't go quietly. Danny's got evidence hidden. Bob's writing everything down. We're 3 stupid boys trying to fight something bigger than nations. But sometimes that's what heroes really are. Just people too stupid to know they can't win. There's something else, Elizabeth said. She pulled out a small key. Frankie gave me this that last morning. Said if something happened, wait 50 years, then use it. I waited 75. The key had a number 1527, and a location, Chicago First National Bank. Whatever's in that box, Elizabeth said. Frankie died to protect it. The 11th of November 2019, Arlington National Cemetery. The ceremony was everything the government could orchestrate. Flags, an honor guard, a 21-gun salute for 3 heroes finally coming home. The president spoke about duty and sacrifice. The Air Force Chief of Staff called them exemplars of American courage. Emma stood with the families wearing her grandfather's wings on her lapel. Sarah Wand held her grandmother's hand, the woman who'd waited 3 years for Bobby before giving up. David Holbrook supported his grandmother Elizabeth, who stood straight despite her age. When it was Emma's turn to speak, She stepped to the podium and looked out at the crowd. Reporters, military brass, 3 coffins draped in flags that held only partial remains recovered from Belgian soil. She'd prepared a speech about heroism and sacrifice. Instead, she said, "My grandfather was 24 years old when he was murdered by his own country for refusing to stay silent about war crimes. He wasn't a hero. He was a young man who loved his pregnant wife and wanted to come home. But when he found something evil, he couldn't look away." Gasps from the crowd. Coleman started moving forward, but Emma continued. Frankie Holbrook was 25. He married his girlfriend 2 days before he died because he knew he was going to be killed. Bobby Whelan was 19. He threw up from fear before they executed him, but he still held his friend's hands as they died. The president's aides were frantically signaling to cut the microphone, but the sound tech, a young veteran, kept it on. "They want you to believe these men died as patriots." They did. But patriotism isn't blind obedience. Sometimes, it's standing up to your own country when it's wrong. Sometimes, it's dying to expose the truth. She pulled out the capsule Blackwood had hidden for 75 years, the one Danny had carried on his last flight. This contains evidence that the American government was collaborating with Nazi doctors before the war. That Operation Prometheus wasn't a rogue program, but official policy. That my grandfather and his friends were murdered not for finding a secret, but for threatening to expose a partnership between American and German eugenicists that started in the 1932. Security was moving in now, but Emma spoke faster. "They died singing." Emma's voice had already broken through the silence long before security's hands reached her arms. The microphones went dead, the speakers cut out, but it didn't matter, her words had found 1,000 other mouths. Phones lifted like torches, cameras wide-eyed, and the names of 3 forgotten boys, Danny Garrett, Frankie Holbrook, Bobby Whelan, flew from her lips into the marrow of a restless crowd. "They didn't die for America," she had shouted into the cut wires. "America killed them, and they deserve justice, not ceremony." It was the kind of sentence that burned after it was spoken. The kind that turned an event into a fracture line. The honor guard stiffened. The president's aides gestured furiously. Veterans in uniform froze between pride and disbelief. But the sound had already escaped, bouncing across screens, bleeding into headlines before anyone could swallow it. When they dragged Emma down the steps, she fought only long enough to stop before the middle coffin, the one draped in a flag that covered what was left of Lieutenant Daniel Garrett. She pressed her palm flat against the rough cloth. "I told them, Grandpa," she whispered so low it seemed meant only for the stone and the silence. "The whole world knows now." That evening, in the sterile glare of federal custody, the adrenaline drained out of her like water through cupped hands. 4 walls, a humming light, guards with blank faces. The charge sheet changed with every hour. Disrupting a federal ceremony, releasing classified material, inciting public disorder. Each was simply a different name for the same crime, speaking the truth too loudly. Her lawyer, weary but steady, leaned across the table. "They don't know what to do with you," he said. "Prosecuting the granddaughter of Danny Garrett right now would be political suicide. They're stalling. 10 to 19 from with 1,000 verse tame, tenter with 2, but Emma already knew that. She could feel the machinery whirring above her, gears grinding, narratives being written in back rooms. They didn't want justice. They wanted containment. The door opened. Coleman entered. The deputy director of the CIA looked older than the day before, as though the weight of half a century of secrets had finally bent her spine. She didn't bother with introductions. "The president wants this to go away," she said, dropping into the chair opposite. "You've turned 3 dead pilots into martyrs and made the entire intelligence community look like murderers." Emma didn't blink. "That's because you are." Coleman's jaw tightened. "We're pragmatists. There's a difference. Tell that to my grandfather." Coleman reached into her bag and slid a tablet across the table. A classified file opened with a swipe. Photographs, graphs, casualty figures. 1962. Soviet agents released a modified strain of tuberculosis in Afghanistan. It killed 3,000 people in 2 weeks. The only reason it didn't spread worldwide was because we had antidotes. Antidotes born of Prometheus research. Emma stared at the words, bile rising. You're saying those experiments saved lives? I'm saying the world isn't good versus evil, Coleman replied. Your grandfather believed in black and white. That clarity killed him. No, Emma said softly. Morrison killed him. Coleman's eyes flickered. Morrison followed orders from people weighing 3 pilots against millions. She leaned closer. You want to hear the real reason they had to die? She painted the picture with careful strokes. The 14th of October, 1944. The Eagle's Nest pub. Danny drunk but not too drunk. Frankie watchful. Bobby terrified but loyal. Danny had broken into Morrison's office. He had found documents older than the war itself. American officials visiting Dachau in 1938. Prisoner transfer records. Lectures on eugenics. The Nazis hadn't birthed the nightmare alone. They'd borrowed from American experiments. Prometheus hadn't been a desperate wartime compromise. It was a continuation. A collaboration disguised as opposition. Coleman slid one more photo across the table. Grainy, blurred by cigarette smoke. Danny Garrett in a bar, leaning toward a woman with dark hair. Katya Vulov, Coleman said. NKVD agent. Your grandfather wasn't just stumbling into secrets. He was meeting with the enemy. 4 on the front 5er. And E5 remained. Emma's stomach turned. The photo looked damning. You're fabricating this. The photo's real. The woman was real. Whether he meant to betray or simply gather intelligence, we'll never know. Morrison made a judgment call. Emma felt the walls shudder inside her chest. All the certainty she had clung to was suddenly porous. He was trying to expose war crimes, she whispered. He was a confused young man, Coleman countered. Courageous. Yes. Loyal to his friends, but not the hero you want him to be. Doesn't that complicate the narrative? Before Emma could answer, the door cracked open. Her lawyer entered, trailed by Elizabeth Holbrook, white-haired, eyes sharp as glass, and David, Frankie's grandson. We need a moment, the lawyer said. Coleman rose reluctantly and left. Elizabeth wasted no time. She leaned across the table, her hand trembling but her voice steady. She's lying. Emma blinked. That woman in the photo? Katya Vulkov was a double agent working for us. Morrison sent Danny to meet her. Frankie told me the night before they died. It was all a setup. Morrison needed a cover story if the boys vanished. David dropped a folder on the table. Inside were reels of film newly developed from Frankie's safety deposit box. One frame showed Morrison himself with Katya Vulkov in 1943. She wasn't hunting American pilots. She was his asset. Emma's breath caught. So Morrison set up my grandfather to look like a traitor. Perfect cover for murder, Elizabeth said grimly. The lawyer spoke next. And Danny wasn't the only one. We've tracked 17 other pilots, all sent on mysterious patrols in 1944 and 45. All disappeared. Every one of them had asked the wrong questions. Emma stood, pacing the small room. 17. How many boys did they kill to keep this buried? As many as it took, Elizabeth whispered. Then her eyes burned with sudden fire. But here's what they didn't count on. Us. The widows who never remarried. The children who grew up in silence. The grandchildren who kept asking why. From her bag, Elizabeth pulled a journal, its leather worn soft by decades of hiding. Frankie's real diary. The one Morrison's men never found. Emma opened it, her hands shaking. The final entry dated the 14th of October, 1944. Tomorrow we die. Danny is certain, and I trust him. Morrison will kill us for what we know. But better to die asking the world a question it can't ignore. Evidence in boots, in banks, in the people we love. If you find this, Elizabeth, Tell our child their father died free. Emma looked up through tears. They knew exactly what they were doing, Elizabeth said, her voice like a bell. They weren't heroes in the way governments make statues. They were heroes in the way that matters standing up to their own side when it was wrong. The door burst open. Sarah Whelan hurried in, breathless. Emma, you need to see this. She thrust her phone forward. Headlines scrolled across the screen. CIA file leak. Operation Prometheus. Exposed. Someone leaked Coleman's entire file, Sarah said. Pre-war collaboration. The murders. All of it. Who? Emma asked. The leak came from inside, Sarah whispered. Someone with clearance. Someone who's finally had enough. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your grandfather saved my father from Dachau before it was liberated. Time to repay the debt. Check the news in 1 hour. And 1 hour later, the Attorney General appeared at a podium. A special investigation announced. Criminal charges promised. The gears of justice, creaking reluctantly into motion. Coleman reappeared in Emma's doorway. Her face was gray with exhaustion. You're free to go. All charges dropped. The president doesn't want you near a courtroom. She paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, I think your grandfather would be proud. You finished what he started. Emma's reply was soft but sharp as glass. He shouldn't have had to start anything. He should have come home. That night, the families gathered not at Arlington's manicured lawns, but at the makeshift memorial in Belgium's soil. 17 candles burned in the night air. Elizabeth, 97 years old, stood as straight as a soldier. They called our men traitors to justify murder, she said to the cameras. They called them heroes to avoid accountability. But they were simply young men who saw evil and refused to pretend it was anything else. They paid the price for having consciences. Candles flickered. Wind swayed the flames. Emma looked at the light and thought of Danny's last moments. Hands joined, voices shaking, choosing to sing as the dark closed in. 24 years old, the same age Emma was now. She couldn't match their courage, but she could carry it. The 7th of December, Washington. Rain smeared the streets when General Arthur Fitzgerald, Morrison's aide, was wheeled into custody. 98 years old, he muttered to reporters. I was following orders. The words tasted like ash. The Nuremberg defense had never worked. Not then, not now. Beside Emma, Sarah Whelan's umbrella trembled with fury. One old man, she said bitterly. That's all they've got. Emma couldn't disagree. The architects were already dead, buried under flags they never earned. Justice felt small in her hand. Her phone rang. Elizabeth again, her voice thinned by age and illness. It's time. At George Washington University Hospital, Emma found her in a narrow bed, her grandson David at her side. Elizabeth smiled faintly. Don't look so sad. 97 is a good run. Emma took her hand. You could have rested these last weeks. Rest? Elizabeth whispered. Not while they were still lying about Frankie. I couldn't meet him again, carrying that silence. She drew a breath that rattled. I need to tell you something. About the 15th of October, 1944. I was there. Emma froze. I followed Frankie to Belgium, Elizabeth said. I saw them land. I saw Morrison's men drag them away. And I hid. I could have tried to stop it, but I was 22, pregnant, and terrified. I lived with that cowardice for 75 years. Her eyes filled. Your grandfather wasn't afraid at the end. Frankie wrote that Danny made them all brave. But I. Her voice broke. I couldn't even try. She died that night, whispering Frankie's name. A week later, a knock at Emma's door revealed Thomas Peterson, the son of Danny's crew chief. He carried a box, like a coffin in miniature. My father left this for your family. He never forgave himself. Inside lay Danny's pistol, never fired. His wings, tarnished by time, and a letter written in a shaking hand. I knew they were going to kill him. Morrison's men told me to install those fuel cutoffs. I obeyed. I was more afraid of court-martial than murder. Danny figured it out. He asked me to take care of Margaret and the baby. I lived. He died. That's the injustice. Cowards survive. Brave men vanish. Emma's hands trembled as she touched the pistol. He wasn't a coward, she told Peterson. He was just a man trapped in an impossible choice. AV-10s. But she knew what Danny had said that last morning. Take care of Margaret and the baby. Even then, his last thoughts were for family. On Christmas Eve, Arlington was quiet, except for the crunch of winter grass. Danny's grave was no longer symbolic. What fragments they had recovered from Belgium now lay in the earth beneath the stone. 3 boys mingled together, bones, cloth, memory. Because after 75 years they could not be separated. Emma brought his wings, but someone had already beaten her to the offering. Flowers, a bottle of bourbon, and a note. Danny, Frankie, Bobby, we flew home without you. Never stopped feeling like deserters. See you on the other side. Signed by the surviving members of the 357th. One by one, families arrived. Sarah Whelan with her children, explaining who Uncle Bobby had been. David Holbrook carrying his grandmother's ashes to scatter at Frankie's side. Others too. Descendants of prisoners from Sector 7. Even German families whose grandfathers had once worn white coats. No invitation had been sent. But grief is a magnet. An old woman approached Emma. I was a nurse at Sector 7, she confessed. I thought I was helping refugees. Then, I saw the truth. I stayed silent, but I wrote their names. No one should die nameless. She handed Emma a notebook filled with hundreds of entries, victims remembered, identities restored. As the sun set, Emma opened Danny's journal to the last entry written in ink. Tomorrow I die for something I believe in. Not country, not flag, but truth. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite the fear. We will die together, eyes open, hands linked. That is our resistance. She traced the words until her vision blurred. The headstone was simple. 3 names, 3 ages, and 1 line. They flew home together. The investigation would drag on. Charges would rise and fall. Truths would be contested. But none of that could change what had already been won. 3 boys erased from history were remembered. Their courage acknowledged. Their murders named. And somewhere beyond stone, beyond silence, beyond the reach of secrecy, Danny Garrett, Frankie Holbrook, and Bobby Whelan were finally, irrevocably, home.